Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the organization that handles student loans and grants, that is college loans and grants, is undergoing big reforms. Its chairman is here to explain. Then, Bonusgate trials, won't they ever go away? They're about to get underway. Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock Newspapers is here to analyze. And then finally, the tolling of Route 80 has been rejected by the federal government. Infrastructure of the state of Pennsylvania, how badly in need of is it of new financing? That and more on Pennsylvania Newsmakers. Government and politics, in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, very quickly, we're honored today. We have State Representative William Adolph in the House. He's the chairman. He also has a couple of jobs. We could chat with him about that. One is he's the head of the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Agency. College loans and grants, pretty important, wouldn't you say?
Well, having three sons that recently graduated from college, it was pretty important, yes.
There you go.
Yes.
Tell our viewers what you all do at PHEAA. PHEAA is the acronym for it. Go ahead, sir.
Well, PHEAA was created some 45 years ago by the General Assembly to help families in Pennsylvania to have their sons and daughters receive a affordable education. It started out with help from the taxpayers of Pennsylvania, a $3.8 million appropriation to help 6,500 students. It now has grown to an appropriation of over $400 million, wow. And it now helps over 170,000 Pennsylvania
wow. So
residents.
It's a pretty important agency. I mean, you do both loans and grants, correct?
Right now, Terry, what started out with just the grants, and over the years, the agency started to get in the student loan business through a federal government plan.
Right.
However, back in 2008, the board suspended its student loans because of the turbulence in the capital markets.
Okay.
There was no cash out there to lend,
right.
And the board made a decision, a tough decision.
So you're not, and you haven't picked those up at all. They're still being done. You'll go to other lenders.
Matter of fact, Terry, we were just awarded a federal contract. We're one of the 4 vendors nationwide. We're going to be servicing the new federal direct loans.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So you're back into business, kind of indirectly.
Just service, since we have the infrastructure and
yeah.
we have the personnel, and it's a good deal.
Well, let's go to the heart of the matter here. I mean, over the past couple of years, not recently, your organization had come under some criticism for expenses and conferences, and I guess that's all put behind you. And you've now gone through a restructuring. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Terry, the makeup of the board is 20 board members.
Right.
16 members of the General Assembly, and 3 appointed by the governor, plus the Secretary of Education.
Right.
And over the 45 years, obviously, the board has expanded, went into other types of business, a commercial brand. We're known throughout the nation as American Education Services, AES. Right. And after facing the turbulence in the capital markets back in 2008, and just recently elected to chairman at that time, I felt that how can we improve the board? I think the boards over the years have done a great job sticking to its mission, trying to make higher education more affordable. But Terry, some of the decisions that board of directors of this agency have to make and will make in the future are very, very complicated. And myself and Vice Chairman Senator Logan thought that how can we improve the board? And we thought that by adding some folks from private industry, whether they be bankers, attorneys, CPAs, those that are involved in the type of work that the agency is involved in.
So your point was that, you know, you had 16 lawmakers and not necessarily folks with the kinds of backgrounds that would be helpful as your mission diversifies and you get into a lot more complexity with what you do. In addition to your staff, you felt that you needed that kind of diversity on the board?
Absolutely, and it was a bipartisan effort,
Yeah.
and this is something that the board has worked on and so forth, and there has been no changes in the board makeup in over 45 years.
Right.
So it was time, and we have advisory committees and so forth that the higher education folks are involved in, whether it be Penn State or whether it be the private institutions, the community colleges.
So you're constantly getting advice from and suggestions and...
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
But these major decisions, refinancing, bonds, we have over $11 billion of student loans on the books.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is high finance, and quite frankly, we're looking for good folks to step up to the plate throughout the Commonwealth.
Okay. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on. We're out of time for this segment, but I want to make this point now. You're chairman of the the Appropriation Committee. You're the minority chairman. You got a big job ahead of you, so we're going to have you back. Hopefully you'll come back when we get into the throes of this discussion, and you can explain this. We don't want you in the legislature after June 30. You agree with that?
I agree 100%.
All right,
we got to get it done.
Yeah, Representative Adolph, there's a bunch of hats, PHEAA chairman, House member, Appropriation Minority Chair. Thanks for coming on the program. All right, Robert Swift, Bonusgate, here we go again. Robert Swift will be here after we pay some bills, talking about money. Back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PHEAA For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PHEAAConstructionjobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, Robert Swift from Times-Shamrock Newspapers, one of the state's leading reporters, is in the house, as they say, to chat with us about, here we go again, Robert, Bonusgate. It's back on the table. Preliminary hearings underway for former Speaker John Purcell, public corruption. Looks like they'll probably get enough evidence to have the full trial. At the heart of the matter of this Bonusgate trial and all of the others, what is really at the heart of the matter here?
What's at the heart of it is the systematic, allegedly, systematic use of public resources and employees to do campaign work. And, somebody, you get to the point where how much of the public time in dollars, there's a dollar value in what was used. In the case against John Purcell and Brett Feast, former House Appropriations Chairman, there's a question of the use of computer technology. And for anybody trying to follow this case, there's 10 defendants. It's pretty massive. It's going to get very technological.
Right.
But there are two, I think, if this goes to trial, and we expect a strong defense from Mr. Purcell, there's two. It's going to be interesting in how this technology was used on Election Day at the polls. And there's another aspect to it. There were allegations that the House Republicans had staffers basically working out of their homes across the state. They were supposed to help members of the district offices. The allegations are they were doing campaign
So
activity.
the point, all of these charges at core, as you point out, and this is, I think, important, 25 people altogether, and we'll take off the table Senator Jane Orey from Allegheny County, who was indicted by the Allegheny District Attorney on 10 counts, all, again, basically dealing with public corruption. The original Bonusgate, now up to 25, and we're trying to put some perspective. Almost all of them now, it involves a lot of computer time. Were there computer programs? Were they used for campaigning instead of for what purpose?
They would have been, the normal purpose would have been, analyzing maybe
bills,
constituent reaction bills. Instead, they were, databases of voters. They had handheld computers at the polls that were, and a lot of times the candidates running didn't even know. They thought it was all the House Republican Campaign Committee. Instead, it was public dollars. And the people say this activity has gone on for the use of, in the Capitol.
Staffers, anyway, on
an ad hoc basis. But
right?
it got, after 2000, according to these indictments, on both sides, and it got very systematic and organized, and that's where these conspiracy charges start to come in.
Right.
And then you even have, with the Republican case, you have some obstruction of justice that they're trying to win.
So once they're nabbed, or once they think they're going to get nabbed, then they try to, the allegation, we'll make that clear, is that they try to cover it up by hiding whatever it is, the computer information or staff time or
meetings that they were held to discuss this. They may rearrange notes that were taken or draft the new ones.
Yeah, you know what's sort of fascinating about this is that, you know, it's kind of a ho-hum among the voters. I thought there would be more, nowhere near the outrage. Now, you wrote a lot about the infamous pay hike in 2005. Is this, do you think, because there's sort of a general attitude, well, doesn't everybody do this? I mean, it sort of pervades
part of it is
the thinking.
Pennsylvania is a state with many regional media markets.
Yeah.
And so far, the trials have gotten a lot of attention. The first trial was former Rep. Mike Vian. Well, that got a lot of attention in the Pittsburgh media.
Right.
This one, you know, bringing Purcell in
may get attention
in the Philly media.
Right.
But that's somewhat of what's going on here. So they're not just like the initial reaction to the pay raise was regional in nature.
Right.
So the coverage of the trials, in some cases too, you had what were essentially political machines, regional political machines on trial. In the case of Mike Vian, there was work done on behalf of local candidates in Lawrence County, in his backyard.
Right. And in the case, and just to reaffirm that, look, we'll see if ultimately there's a trial for a former House member from York County, Steve Stetler, who faces similar charges. So you expect then that the media coverage in South Central Pennsylvania, should that trial, you know, ultimately come to term, you know. Okay, before I let you go, there's a big difference now. This is the first in a series brought by the Attorney General. Previously, these kind of indictments were not brought by state officials, but mostly by federal officials. Does that make some kind of big difference here?
That's starting to make a difference. We're starting to see legal motions by defendants challenging certain state laws that they're charged under. One was, as Senator Orion, Representative Weiss, challenging a conflict of interest law, saying it's too vague and it applies. There's another law that they've used, theft of services, that is facing the U.S. Supreme Court challenge. In the past, and the reason is this is the first big state prosecution since the 50s.
So you think we're going to have some there will be some challenge to the constitutionality of these state laws on the grounds that they're vague and
it's just because they're being used essentially for the first time.
All right, there you have Robert Swift. All right, tolling of Route 80 was rejected, but I'll tell you, it's not just about tolling of Route 80. The state has a huge problem with infrastructure, the funding of it that extends to the billions of dollars. Bob Latham is here. He will provide an assessment following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back. Well, Bob Latham, who comes on this show whenever we have a discussion about transportation infrastructure needs, he's the Executive VP of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors. All right, Bob, let's go to the big thing. The feds turned down the tolling of Route 80. Immediately, that brings about a $470 million hole in the budget, but there's sort of bigger problems with the infrastructure financing. Let's talk about that first, then we'll get to the special session.
Sure,
talk about the funding for roads,
absolutely.
bridges.
I mean, we had to go back to 2006, 2007, and look at the study commission that the governor put together. They had sort of 3 levels of recommendations and came with the sort of the middle recommendation, which is about a $1.6 billion a year increase in highways and transit. Act 44, of which
I want to stop you here. $1.7 billion a year to do what?
That would just maintain our existing public transit and highway system. No capacity enhancement.
That's a critical point, because we're not talking about expansion. We're talking about maintaining an infrastructure that is badly in need of it. I think every Pennsylvanian admits that. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Well, Act 44 was passed. It got to about half of that that midpoint level, so it didn't even fill that need. And then the I-80 portion was a portion of that. The I-80 tolling scheme, if you will, was turned down by the federal government, and now here we are. We've lost 50% of the half of a half, if you will. So we're part of a much larger group. You know, when you think of us, we represent engineers and construction people and that sort of thing. Obviously, we build the roads, and we employ a lot of people in the process. But we're working with labor, public transit agencies, even folks like AARP that need public transit in rural areas, bike advocates, airports, and others. So we have a very large coalition, and we're putting together a vision for getting back to that comprehensive approach that started in 2005 with the Governor's Commission.
All right. Now, the Governor has called for a special session. It's obviously a tough year, you know, the big budget. Now this problem sort of drops into it with a deficit budget this year, and the Governor you know, has an agenda that he wants to complete. The special session coming up will deal with specifically with what and some possible solutions to this problem.
Well, first of all, we don't know what the special session will deal with, because the Governor will, from what we understand, Governor Rendell is going to address the joint session of the General Assembly on May the 4th and lay out the parameters of the special session.
Okay.
We think, you know, when you look at Governor Rendell, he's been a national advocate for infrastructure. I can't think of any governor that's been so out front on the need for comprehensive solutions to infrastructure. We'd like to see him at this point say, look, we have an opportunity to stop talking about minuscule things or patchworks. Let's set a vision. Let's go forward. Let's work together, and let's create a lasting legacy here of things that we can get done. We can have better public transit. We can expand. We can do projects that will create safety, and will have a lasting effect
sort of
20 years down the road.
You're looking for a holistic approach instead of every year having some crisis because there's not a dedicated funding stream to fix these huge number of roads and bridges that are in state. Is that
absolutely
pretty the essence of it?
That's the essence of it. I mean, our coalition thinks that, you know, it's time to stop dealing with crises, and let's look at a vision, and let's look at something that would positively impact the citizens of Pennsylvania in the long term.
We're going to go to break. I want to come back and take a look at some of what those ideas might be. We'll just float them out there.
Sure.
All right, there you go. Pennsylvania's infrastructure funding. It's a huge problem, but an important one that needs to be solved. We'll be back with Pennsylvania Newsmakers following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Pennsylvania's infrastructure, that's the topic of the moment on Pennsylvania Newsmakers with Bob Latham. All right, Bob, listen. In addition to that, every time I see road and bridge construction going on, I see people working. What's the significance for job creation?
Well, let's talk about what we can really accomplish with job creation with this holistic approach that we talked about in the first segment. If we start a massive or a comprehensive infrastructure program. This is capital needs in public transit. If you go to the southeast and look at SEPTA and some of the needs they have bridges that need to be rebuilt. They have lines that need to be done.
And we have a little chart here, right? That you brought.
And if we do, if we get to this, if we get to a solution like this. This program will create about 50,000 jobs in Pennsylvania. That'll reduce, right now our unemployment's about 500,000, so that's a 10% drop in unemployment. And when we talk about jobs and infrastructure, everybody says, well, you're talking about the guys with the shovels and the asphalt rakes. But as you can see by the graphic, most of these jobs are created in other industries, manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, because when you have a better infrastructure, businesses look at where they're going to relocate, and infrastructure is a key part of it. You hear a lot about taxes and you hear a lot about labor policy from some people, but infrastructure brings industry here as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the last thing I'll get to in a moment about how we're going to pay for all this, but it seems to me that you can't have a modern economy without a modern infrastructure system. I mean, we need the electronic one, which we all know about, but we also have to get that I don't understand. I know it's a big problem because of the cost, and there's the segue, cost. What are some of the ideas that are out there that you think have some feasibility?
Well, again, back in 2006, the Pennsylvania Economy League, very respected think tank here in Pennsylvania, came up with sort of a 4-point plan. We're going to have to face the fact that user fees are going to be a part of this. So we're going to have to look at our liquid fuels tax, which we haven't touched since 1997. I can't think of any other cost or charge or business that hasn't raised their prices in 13 years. That's one of them. We need to look at maybe some regional solutions so that we can get some of those projects out, and some of those things have to do with creating maybe super authorities in some of those areas so that we don't have balkanization among the counties, and I think that'll help some of the transit agencies as well. We have to look at debt capacity and perhaps borrowing for some of these capacity projects that'll have a long-term.
And we've historically borrowed for lots of economic development projects over the course of a couple of decades, right?
Yeah, that's one. And then a small part of it could be public-private partnerships. And everybody people like to throw that out as the solution. Now, that has some limited applications and could work for some projects as well. Some of these expansion projects that might work in some of the higher density areas, exactly. So those are some of the ideas. But I mean, the bottom line is there's no silver bullet, and I think people, when you set out a vision for them and you say, this is what's going to happen, this is how it's going to positively impact your life, as opposed to selling the negative, then I think that people will understand that to have a safe roads, have good mass transit, it's going to cost a little bit more money.
Well, look, thanks for coming on. You'll come back and update us. Special session, it's a big deal. And this is a problem, a serious problem, in search of an important solution. All right, thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.